I want to tell a story that happened to a friend of mine. To be more precise, it happened to both of us, but he was the one who suffered the most. The story is real, no exaggeration. I am telling the story in secret from my friend, so all names have been changed. My friend forbade me to tell it, but it's impossible not to share it. Now I am moving with my family to another city, and I want to leave this burden here. I'll start by telling you a little about my friend. His name is Alexander. He was born February 20th, 1986. His parents are very influential and rich people. He and I have been friends for a long time. We even went to the same university, and we got a job together after the university. During my studies, I sometimes worked part-time, but he didn't need it. He didn't need money. We two rented a 2-bedroom, took girls there, held parties, in general spent student life as it should be two free guys. And then one day, he and I went out of town to a friend's house for the weekend. Summer, river, kebabs, alcohol, girls. Anyway, after 3 days, we all looked like squeezed lemons. We had to leave on Monday for a mutual friend's birthday. So we were the only ones who left the country house on Sunday night. This village was located 3 kilometers from the roadway. So these 3 kilometers had to walk. We did not order a car. We decided to walk. It was summer after all. And on the highway to catch a hitchhiker. We gathered lazily, and for a long time. In the end, we left the village at about 11 p.m. The white nights. It was light. We were walking slowly, chatting, remembering our school years, laughing, as suddenly I noticed a small cemetery on my right hand. I was surprised because when we drove into the village, I hadn't seen it, but I calmed myself by saying that I just didn't pay attention to it. I am not a fearful person, and I do not believe, or rather did not believe, in all sorts of paranormal phenomena. But still, I was a little creepy. Sasha only laughed when I told him to move faster to pass this unpleasant place. In general, we reached the highway. It was already past midnight. There were very few cars, and those that passed by did not stop. We stood like that for about an hour, cursing that we did not agree to go on Monday morning with everyone. We didn't want to go back either, even though it was not far away. If we decided to go home, we should go home. Moreover, we had to get up early, and with those parties we had in the house, we wouldn't get a good night's sleep. We smoked nervously, realizing that we might not leave here at all. We agreed that if we didn't catch anything within half an hour, we would return to the village. And the net, as it turned out, was not catching, so we couldn't order a cab. Suddenly, with my side vision, I saw something slowly approaching, white. Turning around, I saw that there was a girl, in a white dress, up to the knee, with thin straps, very beautiful, redhead with green eyes. I yanked Sashka. He turned around and instantly stretched in a smile. I was a little annoyed, realizing his thoughts and intentions, because I liked her too. She came up to us, and with a warm smile, asked where we were going. We explained everything to her. I asked her where she was from. She pointed to the road leading to the village. I did not specify. Just except for the village, there was nowhere else to be, and in vain did not specify. We talked and joked. From the conversation, we learned that her name was Christina. She was 18 years old. She had been on vacation for 2 months in the village with her mother and sister, and now she was returning home. Even then, it seemed strange to me that after 2 months of living, she returned home without a single bag. In her hands was only a cell phone and keys. But I did not ask. You never know. Turns out she lives in the city, in the same neighborhood as us. She has her own apartment, and her dad gave it to her. She just finished school. In general, I felt something like a crush. I couldn't take my eyes off her. But Sasha, too, behaved strangely, not habitually different, sincere, or something. I did not see in his words and looks not a drop of ambiguity and vulgarity. Then, he confessed to me that he loved her. Even then, I thought it was strange that after 2 months of living, she comes home without a single bag. In her hands was only a cell phone and keys. But I did not ask. You never know. Turns out she lives in the city, in the same neighborhood as us. She has her own apartment. Her dad gave it to her. She just finished school. In general, I felt something like a crush. I couldn't take my eyes off her. But Sasha, too, behaved strangely, not habitually different, sincere or something. I did not see in his words and looks not a drop of ambiguity and vulgarity. Then, he confessed to me that he loved her. Anyway, we hitched a ride, and all three of us left. A couple weeks went by. Should I tell you that Sasha was quick to hustle and started courting Christina? I didn't love her, of course, but I liked her, and I was mad at my friend because he always tries to be you first. Every time I called her, she said she was out with Sasha. And every time I didn't call him, he was out with her. He came home in the middle of the night or in the morning. I never went out to him. I had no desire to talk to him. But he always came alone, without her. I gloated that he couldn't get her into bed. We rarely talked to each other, or rather, I avoided him. I stopped calling Christina. I didn't answer her calls or texts. I got angry and resented the whole world. With Sasha, we crossed paths either in the bathroom or in the kitchen. Any other free time I tried to spend with my friends. On all his invitations to go out with the three of them, I refused, coming up with new excuses every time. One day, after another couple weeks, he fished me out of the house and made me talk to him. He said he understood why I resented him, that I liked Christy too, but explained to me that he loved her, that he couldn't live without her, and asked for my understanding. I saw my friend like that for the first time, and I realized that he was telling the truth. He really loves her. So I let her go from my heart too. And I started to communicate closely with Sasha again. 6 months passed. By the way, I want to note the fact that when we met Christina, we were 19 years old. We had just moved to the second courses. And he informs me that they decided to get married. By that time, I was already absolutely to Christina and was very happy about this news. At that time, I was already dating a girl to whom I am now married and from whom I have a son. Preparations for the wedding did not take long. My Vika was a bridesmaid, ran with her shopping. Sasha's parents liked Christina very much. But one fact confused me. At the wedding will not be any of Christina's relatives, not even her mother and sister, at whom she lived then, in the summer. And Sasha never introduced them. She never made excuses, just did not answer questions about her family, and soon Sonia left her with this topic. Strange, very strange, I thought. But I did not focus on it. The wedding took place. As I said, there were no relatives from the bride's side. I remember at the wedding, Vika told me that when she and Christy went shopping, she told her that she just had to get married, that it was her life's work, that she wouldn't be able to rest after her death. Vika just laughed at that, and then she moved on to another topic because the wedding was coming up, and Christina was saying such things about death. When my girlfriend told me this, we just looked at each other and forgot one. After Sasha and Christina's wedding, a year passed. Vika and I were already married by that time and just returned from the honeymoon and learned the good news. Christina is pregnant, and my Vika too. In general, Christina was already on the 3rd month when we returned, and my Vika on the 1st. It should be noted that Sasha and Christy lived soul to soul, without scandals and troubles, lived happily. Sasha just flew, not walked on the ground. I had never seen him so happy. And when he found out that he would soon become a father, he almost went crazy with joy. I was happy for him, and for me, no less. But when Christina was 7 months pregnant, she suddenly disappeared. She said she was going to visit her sister and mom and come back. But no one ever saw her again. Sasha went crazy, day and night in that village, going around every house and asking questions, and his wife, hanging on the phone, calling hospitals, maternity hospitals, morgues. The thoughts that went through his head were terrible and horrible. My wife was also worried, which affected her health. So during the search for Christine, I sent my wife to her mother. I started helping a friend. A week passed, another week, no news. Sasha was exhausted, neither ate nor drank, became like a skeleton. He was half faint and cried every day. No one had any hope that she was alive. One day, I told him that I would go to the village myself, to visit the houses where we had not seen the owners before. He agreed. He needed to sleep because he hadn't slept for 3 days. I went house by house with Christina's picture. And when there were only a couple of houses left, I knocked on one of them. The door was opened by a woman about 40 years old, maybe a little more. I said that I was looking for a girl and showed her photo. To say that the expression on the woman's face changed 10 times in 5 seconds is to say nothing. She instantly turned pale, and I realized I'd come to the right place. She invited me into the house, and she could barely stand on her feet. I went in, undressed. The house was very cozy, chic, and expensive furniture, without excessive sophistication, but expensive, and yet comfortable. I sat down on an armchair. The woman opposite me. Coffee was brought to us by a girl of about 25. As it turned out later, it was Christina's sister. She also sat down next to me, and they both stared at me attentively and silently. I didn't want to drink coffee. I had the impression that I was being scanned, and they were waiting for me to start. Finally, I couldn't stand it and took out the photo again and started asking about Christy. If they knew where she was, I explained that she married my friend about 2 years ago. She was 7 months pregnant, said she was going to visit them, and disappeared. We've been looking for her for 3 weeks now. The woman collapsed in tears on the floor. She was hysterical. From the brief snippets, I realized that the woman was Christina's mother. The daughter, whose name was Sonia, managed with difficulty to calm the mother. She herself was also crying quietly, but did not show it, quickly wiping away her tears. When the woman was brought to her senses, she told me what I still wake up in a cold sweat at night. She began her story by saying that Kristina Ivanova, her daughter, had died of a heart attack in 2004. I wanted to correct her, but they wouldn't let me, so I sat there and listened. It went like this. Christina was in the 10th grade when she started dating some guy. She ended up being pregnant in the 11th grade, 7 months pregnant when she graduated. She and her boyfriend were going to get married in August of that summer, right after she gave birth. But it happened that a month after graduation, her boyfriend was hit by a car and died. She got a call about it. Her heart gave out. She had a seizure. She was home alone. She died with the phone in her hand. They came home when it was too late. They couldn't save the baby. They put the phone and the keys to her apartment in the city in her coffin. They wanted to give it to her as a wedding present. They were superstitious people. They did it so that she would have a place to come to. They didn't sell or rent the apartment to anyone. By the way, she was buried in the very dress in which we met her for the first time. I listened to this, waiting for the moment when I would say it was all nonsense, but the woman wouldn't stop. On the eve of her death, her daughter had told her that getting married and having a child was her fondest dream and that she would definitely do it. And then, 6 months after the funeral, a young man came to their house and said, in a trembling voice, that some Ivan had crashed his car and asked her to tell Christina that her fiancé had died, etc. The woman almost went crazy then. She started to ask him what he had just said, and he introduced himself as a friend of her daughter's fiancé and said that she had gone to her mother's house the day before he came to visit her and that Ivan had crashed the same night and he had come to inform her. The woman drank some water with shaking hands and told the boy that her daughter was dead and she could have no suitors and no wedding. The guy didn't believe her until he saw something. I asked what exactly she showed him. The woman left and came back with a black envelope. I pulled the photos out and dropped them from my hands. They were photos from Christina's funeral. She was lying in her coffin, and the dates on the photos were exactly what the woman had said. I became hysterical, screamed, said that this could not be, smoked almost the whole pack of cigarettes in half an hour. When I calmed down, Sonia came up to me and suggested that I go somewhere. I think everyone has already guessed where I was taken. It was the same cemetery that confused me so much at the time. Sonia led me through the rows of graves. Eventually we came to Christina's grave. There was her photo, dates, everything as it should be. I had tears rolling down my eyes. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how I would tell this to a friend who was on the verge of suicide. Sonia told me that's why her mother was surprised so much when it came to Christina. And no wonder, because this was the second time it had happened. Only the first time she never got married. But now she had fulfilled her dream and retired. But how? How can you live with a ghost and not realize it? How can a ghost lead a human life? I couldn't get it all out of my head. Sonia gave me some photos to show to Sasha and advised me to bring him here so he could be convinced and say goodbye to her forever. I drove from there overwhelmed with fear and dread. When I got home, I went straight to bed as I just didn't have the emotional strength. In the morning, my phone was ringing. Sasha was calling. I picked up the phone and told him I'd be there to pick him up in half an hour. I picked him up without a word. We drove to the settlement. Sasha realized from my face that something was wrong. He begged me to tell him what had happened, and I only asked him to wait. We stopped at the cemetery. Sasha had sweat on his face. He did not understand why we had come to the cemetery. I led him through the fences, brought him to Christina's grave, and gave him a photo of her funeral. I stood back, expecting hysteria, anger, horror. But Sasha stood silently, looking away from the photo, then at the monument, stood like that for half an hour, in absolute silence. Then he turned around and walked, even almost ran to the car. When I caught up with him at the car, I found him in hysterics. He was lying on the ground and screaming wildly, asking me how it could be. After an hour, he calmed down, and I told him everything Christina's mother had told me. I thought he'd lost his mind. The look in his eyes was so wild. He decided to talk to her mother himself. I showed him the house. I stayed in the car. He came out an hour or an hour and a half later, in tears. He got in the car and kept mumbling, how could it be? Because she was so real, so alive. And what about their child? Anyway, as I expected, a couple days later, he tried to kill himself. He went to a clinic. We wouldn't let anyone near him but me. He was treated there for a few months. Once he told me that when he and Christina first started dating, she liked me and wanted to be with me, and at that time, I would have agreed without hesitation. But I gave in to Sasha, and Christy ended up loving him. Then, I took Sasha away. He was quite healthy. I advised him to kill himself in work, in studies. He did. We told my Vika that Christina had run off with someone else. She couldn't bear the truth, and I was afraid of how it would affect her. Anyway, he's doing well now, living with a girl. He forbade me to tell anyone about it, but I can't carry this burden anymore. I can only say that after the clinic, Sasha spent hours praying in churches, and in the cemetery to Christina, still brings flowers to Christina every year, her favorite. And I still can't understand, who was he living with?